Hello viewers, welcome back to BDM English. Our grammar topic today is sentence part 2, subject-verb relation. The verb that we put after a subject is to be chosen carefully. We cannot put any form of a verb to make the predicate. An ordinary verb has 6 forms that we use in different positions according to their functions. An ordinary verb is one that is not an auxiliary verb. So, write, sleep, eat, buy, study, drive, fly, etc. are all ordinary verbs. Now, for example, let us take the verb write. Number 1 form of the verb to write is write, the base form of the verb. Number 2, the past tense form of the verb, that is wrote. Number 3, the past participle, written. Number 4, the present participle, writing. Number 5, the gerund, writing. And number 6, the infinitive, to write. These are the forms of an ordinary verb that we use in different positions in a sentence according to their functions. Now we cannot place any of these 6 forms here chosen at random to make the predicate and complete the sentence. To be used in this position as the main part of the predicate, a verb has to pass through these 3 stages: voice, tense, and agreement or concord. First, let us try to understand clearly what voice means and what the 2 main forms of voice are. First, let us take an example. The boy ate a mango. In this sentence, our verb is to eat. We have used the past tense form of the verb, and that is ate. We have chosen the boy as our subject. And at the same time, we have selected the verb to eat. And we have used it in the simple past tense, past simple tense. Obviously, the boy here is the doer or agent of the action of the verb to eat. And mango, a mango is the object of the verb. Now, a verb has the strongest relation with its doer because the doer performs the action of the verb. And only when the doer performs the action of the verb, the questions of an object or other parts of the predicate arises. And for this reason, in a vast majority of English sentences, the doers or agents of the verbs are used as subjects. And when we use the agent as the subject of a sentence, the voice is active. So, in vast majority of sentences we see, and we ourselves make sentences in the active voice, because as subject, our first choice is the doer or agent. It is the natural, normal subject of a verb. The second strongest relation of a verb is with the object. In case of a transitive verb, you know that transitive verbs take objects. Transitive verbs require objects because without an object, a transitive verb cannot complete the minimum length of the predicate. And without completing the minimum length, a predicate cannot help the subject make a sentence and express a complete and clear meaning. Therefore, the first relation of the verb is with its doer or agent, and the second relation is with its object in case of a transitive verb. Now, sometimes we cannot make the doer the subject of the sentence, or we do not want to make it the subject of the sentence for some obvious reasons. And we cannot make a sentence without a subject. In these special circumstances, we have to look for an alternative subject. Now, any word in a sentence chosen at random cannot be used as a subject of a verb. Usually, in almost all the cases, we can use as subject either the doer or the object of the verb. We have two options. We can use as subject the doer or agent, which is our first choice, or we can use the original object of the verb as an alternative subject. So when we use the doer or agent as the subject of the sentence, the verb is in the active voice. And when we use the object as the subject of the sentence, the verb is in the passive voice. So when we recast the sentence by using a mango as the subject, our voice will change from active to passive. A mango was eaten by the boy. A mango was eaten by the boy. In the first sentence, we have chosen the boy, that is the agent of the verb to eat, as the subject. And so the verb is in the active voice. In the second sentence, we have chosen a mango, that is the original object of the verb to eat. And so the voice in this second sentence is passive. These are the two main categories of voice. And this depends on the relation of the verb with its subject. So, to be used in this position after the subject to complete the predicate and thus to complete the sentence, the first stage that we must pass through correctly and successfully is voice. If there is any mistake in calculating the voice, the sentence is bound to be incorrect. But it is not anything difficult to decide the voice of the sentence. The moment we choose our subject and the verb, the voice is automatically decided. It is not anything difficult to understand that the boy here is the doer of the verb to eat. Therefore, the voice is active. And a mango cannot be the doer of the verb to eat. It is the original object. So when we use the original object of the verb as the subject of a sentence, the voice is passive. Therefore, the moment we choose the subject and the verb, we actually decide the voice. And after deciding the voice, we proceed to tense. Because until and unless voice combines with tense, we cannot get any definite specific verb form, structure of the verb, or different forms of the same common structure. Let us again look at the first example. The boy ate a mango. In this single word, verb form, we get the active voice structure. But at the same time, this single word, the verb form in the past tense, also gives us the clear information that it is in the past simple tense. Therefore, without combining voice and tense, we cannot arrive at any specific verb form that we can use after the subject to make the predicate. So, after calculating the voice, we instantly calculate the tense. Now, the calculation of tense, the form of a tense depends on two factors. You know, tense, the main factor of tense is definitely time. But only time cannot give you any clear idea of any specific tense. For example, this sentence is in the past simple tense. Past simple. Notice that there are two words in the name of the specific tense in this sentence, past simple. The word past definitely denotes the time of the action of the verb. And the word simple denotes another component of tense. And that component is called aspect. Therefore, tense is equal to time plus aspect. We have to take into consideration both time and aspect to get a specific tense. If we simply say present tense, we actually do not mean anything specific. We cannot make any definite sentence by just uttering the word present or past or future. We have to take into consideration the second factor or second component of tense, that is aspect. This is past simple tense. Now, if the time remains the same but the aspect changes, the verb form will change. The child was eating. The child was eating a mango. The child was eating a mango. The time of both the sentences is past, but the verb forms are different. Both the sentences are in the active voice because in either case the subject is the doer of the respective verbs. Here the boy is the doer of the verb to eat, and in this example the child is the doer of the verb to eat. So the voice is the same, the time is the same, yet the verb forms are different. The structures of the verbs are different because in this sentence the aspect is continuance. The verb here was in a state of continuance. It was going on. So this is the simple aspect, and this sentence is in the continuous aspect. Similarly, we have the perfect state or aspect. The man has sold his old car. The man has sold his old car. The man has sold his old car. This is in the perfective state because the action of selling the car has been completed. So this is simple aspect. This one is in the continuous aspect, and this one in the perfect state. Of course, this sentence is in the present tense. We could write it in the past tense too. The man had sold his old car before he bought a new one, etc. Now, we have the second option to use as a subject, and that is the original object of a transitive verb. But there are many other verbs that do not require any object. So, if we make a sentence with any of such verbs, we have only one choice, that is to use the doer as the subject of the sentence. Therefore, such verbs can be used only in the active voice. And such verbs that do not require any object are called intransitive verbs. A verb that requires an object is a transitive verb, and a verb that does not require, that does not take any object, is an intransitive verb. The baby is sleeping. The baby is sleeping. To sleep is an intransitive verb. It does not require any object. It is not necessary or essential to put any noun or pronoun here, as we have to put here, and in this case too, because to sleep is an intransitive verb. Therefore, if we make a sentence with an intransitive verb, we have to make only the doer as a subject of the sentence. And that is why we see a vast majority of sentences in the active voice, mainly for two reasons. Number one, this category of verbs, that is the intransitive verbs, are always used in the active voice only because they have no objects. And we use an object as the alternative subject, as we have done here in this sentence. We can also write this sentence in the passive voice. A mango was being eaten by the child. The man's old car has been sold by him. Now, when we get the voice and tense together, we arrive at a particular form of the verb or the different forms of the same verb. For example, in this passive voice sentence, we have another form of the verb to be in the past tense, that is where. Was eaten, were eaten. If this mango was in the plural number, mangoes, 2 mangoes were eaten, then we would have to use the plural form of the verb to be in the past tense, were. Now, when there is only one form, as in this case, past simple tense, active voice, positive sentence, there is only one form, and so we use the same form for all kinds of subjects. We know that subjects can be of 3 persons, first, second, and third, and 2 numbers, singular and plural. The main rule of agreement is that the verb must agree with or follow the person and number of the subject. Now, when there is only one form in a particular tense, as we get here in the past simple tense active voice, we have no question of choosing because it is used after a subject of any person and any number. I ate a chocolate bar. She played chess with her brother. My mother cooked a delicious dish for us. So, whatever the person and number of the subject, in case of the simple past tense active voice, in a positive sentence, we use the same verb form because we have no second one with subject of any person and any number. But when there are 2 or more forms of the same common structure, as here, was or were, in the present tense we have got 3 forms of the helping verb to be, am, is, and are. The baby is sleeping. 2 babies are sleeping. So we make the final selection of the verb form depending on the rule, the basic rule of agreement or concord. That is, the subject controls, the subject decides the person and number of the verb. In a reverse way, we can say the verb has to follow, the verb has to agree with the person and number of its subject. In this way, we start making a sentence. We begin the sentence first by calculating the voice, depending on the relation of the verb with the subject. When the subject is the doer, the voice is active. When the subject is the original object, the voice is passive. And then we proceed to the second stage to form a finite verb, that is tense. When voice and tense combine, it's a combined form. We cannot separate voice from tense in a single verb form. It may be a single word, it may be a compound verb form. Both voice and tense are inseparably blended in each and every verb form. And when we get the structure or the different forms of the same structure, we select the appropriate one according to the rule of agreement. And when we pass through all these three stages successfully and correctly, we get the appropriate form that we put after a subject to make the predicate and thus to complete the sentence. The verbs that I have used in the example sentences describe different actions. So they are called action verbs or dynamic verbs. An action has a definite beginning, then it moves forward, that is, it continues for some time and then ends. But there are some verbs that do not describe such actions. Such a verb describes an existing static condition. There is no sense of motion or movement. The verb describes a static condition which does not change. So they are called stative verbs. And these stative verbs are not used in the progressive or continuous tenses. But like the action verbs or dynamic verbs, stative verbs can also be transitive or intransitive. Appear, look, seem are intransitive stative verbs, while have, possess, own, like, love, etc. are transitive stative verbs. The transitive stative verbs can be used both in the active voice and in the passive voice, like the transitive action verbs. For example, let us take this verb to love. My mother loves me. The sentence is in the active voice because the subject is the doer of the verb to love. We can use the alternative subject, that is the first person singular pronoun I, and make the sentence in the passive voice. I am loved by my mother. That is all about grammar today. In my next video, I will discuss how the type of the verb determines the minimum length of the predicate. Until then, bye, expecting to meet you in my next video.